Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I hope the coffee break was as pleasurable as possible. And before we begin with the last part of the panel, I would also like to begin by some logistical information. We would structure the panel as follows. We will have 40 minutes totals for discussion. The first 30 minutes will be my prepared questions, and then there will be a chance, together with the assistance of the team, to ask your questions from the audience. And after the panel is over, we all very kindly invite you to not leave early, but to stay here in the networking area, because as I've heard, there will be cocktails and snacks and other treats. So you are very welcome to join after a long day of fruitful discussions. And now, as we've all heard and I hope debated about the presentations that were just given, it's now the time to invite the panelists for a joint conversation on the topics that were already touched, and also on some broader insights regarding the overall materials industry insights, challenges, and possibilities. So I would once again like to invite to the stage our dear panelists, Mr. Kalin Marinov, Ms. Miriam Kimrabis, and Mr. Espen Lee. Please take the seats and give them a very warm round of applause, everyone. And I think I will also join the sides as it would be, more comfortable. Here are the microphones. Okay. So once again, I think everyone in the audience is very grateful for the examples and the personal business cases that you shared that led you to the results that you're faced. But I would also like to begin the panel discussion by taking a little bit broader perspective. You are all more or less representing the sector of construction and demolition, and it's no secret that it's one of the most CO2 emissions generating sector, and there should be some future policies and insight on how these issues should be tackled. So I'd like to start the panel discussion by giving a question to all of the panelists on geopolitical factors. And how do you think that the current geopolitical context within the region affect the sourcing of raw materials? And what strategies can business employ to navigate these challenges? So maybe you would like to start.
Yeah, probably I could start. In fact, we had some troubles with deliveries because of the war in Ukraine, because some of our suppliers were from Ukraine. But fortunately, we were able to find new suppliers. I'm not sure that this was in line with what we are talking today and trying to do with decreasing the CO2 emissions, because those suppliers were from Asia, and this was mainly for products that are made of steel and aluminium. But what I'm expecting actually is when we are constructing certain projects on a certain construction site, is more and more that we will have the demand from our clients to calculate what are the CO2 emissions that are related with building a certain project. So then we'll start really to make also a lot of calculation on, and also making decisions based on the places from where we are getting our construction materials and resources. And it is something that we are now starting to do. And actually, as far as I know, there are also already some software solutions that are related with such kind of calculation, to do it automatically based on giving the list of the construction products that you are planning to use in a certain construction site. Then you can calculate also the emissions that are related with this. But yes, at this point, I cannot say that we had that much of difficulties to complete a certain project because of the geopolitical situation. But of course, some delays we had also because of COVID.
Okay, yes, definitely COVID is also a factor. Thank you for your insights. And Ms. Rabis, you operate in Estonia, and as a Lithuania, as a fellow neighbor, I truly know that the geopolitical context can be quite an issue for our supply chains. So would you share your perspective?
Definitely. Now, we don't operate with Upcatalyst in only the construction industry per se. One of our largest target markets is actually the battery industry. And when we're talking about battery industry and the raw materials that we provide, which are graphite and carbon nanotubes, then there are a lot of geopolitical issues, especially due to the fact that graphite itself has been declared as a critical raw material in the EU. And the European Union currently actually imports 98% of all of the graphite that it uses. Now, 75% of this comes from China, so we definitely see a geopolitical issue there and also a supply chain security issue. So that's why it's our mission in Upcatalyst to actually bring production back to Europe, to start producing these raw materials very close to the industry sites where they're finally being produced, as we can see also more battery production is currently moving to Europe. So this is really what we want to do, because the materials that we need for our process, CO2 and electricity, they are abundant everywhere. So bringing the production close to home really can de-risk the geopolitical aspects and also decrease the CO2 emissions.
Thank you for a sincere answer, and it's really glad to hear that your company's goals align with the Critical Raw Materials Act, I believe, just perfectly. So, thank you.
Yeah, and for Semonite, as I mentioned during the pitch, we have one foot in the mining sector because the concrete or the binder material we make is based on mine tailings. So China, Russia, and some certain countries in Africa has a huge part of the mining operations globally, and we want to become more independent from relying on especially from China and Russia. So if we can work with the mining industry and use their tailing in making a concrete, and this will reduce the need for landfills for these companies. So that is a strategy that we are following, and also it supports the geopolitical challenges that we have today.
Okay, thank you. Let's dive deeper into your industry context, discussing the next question. So, Mr. Marinov, during your presentation, you've already given us an overview of the materials that are the most used in your work. So, once again, could you identify what types of raw materials are currently the most demanded within the industry and the work you do? And could you also propose any supply chain development opportunities on how to enhance the demand with international collaboration?
Yep, so the raw materials that are used in the construction industry, they're more or less well known. So we're talking about definitely different varieties of sand. Then we have wood, we have different ores that are needed for production of steel, aluminum as well. It's also important for the construction industry, not only the raw materials, because to be honest, the sand, for example, and the crushed rock we are getting this from locally. I mean, from Bulgaria, we have several places which we are developing through the years, and we have the engagement to afterwards to close them in an environmentally friendly manner. We have a concession for 30-50 years. So basically this is how we operate with these general construction materials. But it's also for the construction industry, it's important how we are dealing with the construction materials. For example, the cement, the concrete, which concrete as well we are able to produce ourselves. We have several sites on which we are doing this. Our company also have some laboratory facilities in which we are testing the different the specificities of the concrete that we are using, and we have also developed some recipes engaging recycled materials. But for the cement industry, we are in Bulgaria. We are kind of lucky because we have several very big producers of cement operating in the country with very large facilities. They are like internationally very well-known companies. Some of them are investing really very heavily in carbon capture facilities in order to produce green cement, which is more and more required also from our clients when we are delivering certain projects. In our group, we have also a company which is dealing with the production of prefabricated concrete elements, and there we are planning to have also such kind of green production, which is based on green cement as well. So for our in our case, the materials that we are needing, actually the construction materials, are those that are produced from like steel and aluminum, which is imported in the country. So in this perspective, we are definitely counting on supplies from Turkey, from Asia. So more or less, this is how it looks, the supply chain in our case. Of course, it would be a challenge now with the requirements for reporting for the ESG, for the sustainable development and sustainable operations. We should require certain information from the supply chain, from our partners. But I guess they will face also these challenges working with also other international companies. So it would be not only our company that will require certain information from them in this respect.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Radis.
Yes, so giving again the perspective from the battery industry, I would say the critical raw materials that are needed the most are graphite, definitely, as it has been declared a critical raw material, but also the heavy metals that are used in the batteries. So currently the industry standard is lithium-ion batteries, and lithium extraction comes with a lot of complex environmental, geopolitical, also socio-economical problems, especially as most of the lithium deposits are in poor countries. So I think the real solution there, at least in my opinion, is the development of new and more innovative technologies. I don't think we're going to be sticking to lithium-ion batteries forever. Sodium-ion batteries are already a very new emerging technology. And sodium itself, it's much easier to extract. You can just do it even from seawater, which again can make the production more local. Now, I think what we want to do with UpCatalyst is very similar for the battery industry. We want to switch out the problematic material for a more sustainable, more easily sourceable one. Luckily, to do that, we don't have to completely change the metal and develop a new technology. We can just replace the carbon nanotubes that are currently being made in China using a process called chemical vapor deposition at 3,000 degrees that come with an associated 900 tons of CO2 emissions per 1 ton produced, and replace them with green, clean carbon nanotubes synthesized locally by UpCatalyst. So I think that would be the best solution there.
Okay, thank you. That's a very interesting perspective. And even though Mr. Marinov is quite positive that the countries operating outside of the European EU will eventually comply to our regulations, but you know, it's a very interesting question for the future, whether we should rely, you know, on our partners from the outside the European Union, or whether we should invest more in developing new technologies here. Mr. Lee, what do you think? What's your take?
Well, in order to make cement, you need limestone to make the clinker. And in order to further reduce your CO2 emissions, the clinker is you find a substitution for the clinker. In many cases, that will be fly ash or slag from steel production. So the problem with these two substitutions are that the fly ash comes from coal power plants, which we are about to phase out. There are still coal plants in operation, I believe, but hopefully within a decade they are long gone. So it's not sustainable to rely on that material, and in terms of the slag from steel production, it's also problematic because producing green steel doesn't create the same type of slag. So the next level you can go to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from cement production is, as Mr. Kalin mentioned, CCUS, which is capital intensive and also requires a lot of energy, but it can be done. I believe in Norway will open maybe the first plant later this year or early next year. So hopefully they will prove it's possible. But as I mentioned, an alternative is to do what Thematic is doing, and by that you're also turning the sector into a circular phase. And cement production today is much about using virgin materials. The aggregate is, of course, you can use demolition waste and yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to add here that also all the CO2 captured using CCUS, we're happy to take and turn into carbon nanotubes.
Of course.
Okay, that's great to hear. As it was already mentioned, both the COVID crisis, the Russia's war in Ukraine, and other geopolitical or societal factors can cause disruptions in the supply chains concerning raw materials. So for the next question, I would like to ask, in what ways could businesses mitigate these risks associated with supply chain obstacles, such as disruptions in material availability or transportation? Or are these, global challenges too big to be tackled on individual level? Maybe you have some insights on that. Let's start.
Yep. So one of the solutions is definitely to start producing locally, but in some cases it's not always possible. Then the other solution is to try to recycle the existing waste as much as possible, even in the case of because currently the construction sector in Bulgaria is mostly importing, I think, steel and some other materials coming from metal, and this is like trying to introduce new ways of recycling those already used materials, because it's an interesting fact, but for example, aluminium, we are still using at least, these are some calculation on global level, of course, that we are still using 75% of the aluminium that was once produced. So it's a good ratio. So this could be a solution, and also for the construction sector, it's the transportation is not always the option, because usually the construction materials are heavy. They are like it's a bit costly to transport them around the globe. So usually you should think of some kind of solution on the local level.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rabis, what about your industry?
I would say that in principle, the answers are very similar to Mr. Marinov's ones. I would agree, firstly, local production, which we're really focused at Catalyst, but also the recycling. So out of the lithium-ion batteries on the market today, currently actually only 10% are being recycled, which is a tragedy because it is a very scarce and valuable metal, lithium, that is being used in these. And it's not just the metals that should be recycled. This also goes to the electrodes and the carbon inside. So luckily, there are a lot of good scientists working on this to figure out the best ways to really get the most out of these used products and reuse these materials and deliver them at a really high quality. I think in this, definitely research efforts from universities and also the universities' collaboration with the industry is really important to help make this a reality and really introduce these new techniques that can allow us to do so in the battery industry.
Okay, so local production, recycling, and research. These are the main takeaways that I hear.
Yes.
Mr. Late, do you agree, or do you have maybe other views?
Well, in my view, if we are going to reach the zero-emission targets, we have to electrify all our processes. And in addition, you need materials to build solar panels, car batteries, windmills, etc., etc. So where do you get all this material from? From mining. And today, China is doing 98% of the global processing of all the minerals and metals. So in order for us to reach the zero-emission targets, we need much more mining activity in Europe, and mining activity creates waste materials, and we can use this as a resource and reuse the material, for instance, in concrete. And I'd also think that there should be more research on alternative use on the mining waste, because there is probably an untapped resource there.
Okay, so from your insights, I gather that there are huge investments needed in order to really bring the production of these materials to Europe. And this is where it comes place to discuss policy. So I think that we should devote the next question of this panel to answering how do certain regulations and policies influence the safe and sustainable access to the raw materials, adoption of circularity and recycling initiatives within your industries, and moreover, what changes are needed to further promote the progress. So let's begin.
Yeah, so I'll make a link with one of the previous sessions when we united on the opinion that now we have more focused public support on in terms of research and innovation programs and supportive measures implemented by the different countries in the EU and in Europe in general, and also those programs that are running horizontally on the European level. We have focus now on research in some concrete spheres like recycling, circularity in different sectors. So now more than ever, it looks like the efforts are concentrated in different in specific directions. So we could expect to have good results. We also have many investments going into the energy efficiency, production of energy from renewables. All these are like the focus of the current R&D agenda of Europe. Also, another thing which is very important also from the perspective of construction companies is when you have certain requirements to use recycled materials and to have also incentives and well-structured approach towards certification of such kind of construction materials produced from recycling process. This is very valuable because we often have this, we are encountering this opinion that when you are offer a product which is produced from recycled materials, the clients are not very happy because they have doubts on the qualities of these construction products. But still, if you have well-structured certification mechanisms which are valid for, and you have certain, I mean, like for the whole Europe, well-established standards, it would be a major help for the sector for the recycling industry. So this is something which is really important and could be good for public policy.
Okay, so basically we have two major branches, R&D investment and unified certification process.
Yeah, focused R&D is a key because we have focused R&D now in these specific areas which are like the foundation of the what we are trying to reach with the Green Deal, with decreasing the CO2 emissions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lee, do you agree or do you think that there should be other measures?
Well, I agree, and I also would like to mention that for Semonite, and speaking about concrete again, we should, I mean, currently there is a limitation in the regulations for our material. So the current standard is a product standard today, and it requires that you use a minimum amount of a specific product. Instead, you can make the regulation performance-based, and of course, all new materials would have to comply with the regulation. But today, it works like just a defense mechanism for one specific product.
Okay.
I completely agree with what Espen is saying, and I think the fact that legislation is always not fast enough to catch up with the innovation is something that we see in my industry as well. So with the Green Deal put in place and us wanting to reduce carbon emissions by 55% by 2030, obviously for us the wind is blowing in the right direction. However, we are very much CCUS, so carbon capture and usage, the U part then company. However, currently most of the legislation there is for carbon capture and storage. So the idea is to have in Europe by 2030 a capacity of 50 million tons of CO2 sequestration underground. But this is not what we see would be the most useful thing to do with the CO2. Obviously, if there are industries like ours which can transfer this into a very valuable product, that would be the go-to and what we really want to achieve. But as I said, currently the CCU legislation is just mostly concerning fuels, and I think our technology for legislators is not even on the radar. Hopefully that is something that will change in the coming future, and just in time for when we have scaled up to the level where we can start accepting gigatons of CO2 to process as well.
Thank you. I think you raised a very important and interesting point for discussion, that the legislation within the EU at most of times do not, come forward the innovations. But I'd like to challenge you in that way, because we also face problems when the governments and policy makers over-regulate. So how would you find, the perfect balance between keeping up with the innovation, but also not putting, the regulatory framework as of too much in terms of businesses?
I think personally that regulation, over-regulation, and doesn't have to mean that if you go together with innovation, it doesn't have to mean that you will get over-regulation. I think the example that Espen brought was really excellent, that, for example, instead of regulating based on a specific substance that is in a product, we start testing on performance. And I think whatever kind of innovation then comes even after the ones currently there, if we're testing on performance, for example, this is a method that allows us to to really select the best product, and we don't need to change the legislation every time. Even if the technology behind it changes, the performance will always decide.
Okay, so legislation does not always equal over-regulation at all times. Thank you. That's a very interesting insight. Okay, and before moving on to the questions for the audience, I'd like to finish on the simpler notes, I believe, because even though your companies are very R&D intensive and you do have some interesting projects, but if we're discussing with the industry, what could you suggest? What efforts could be essential for advancing the sustainable sourcing and recycling on raw materials in business operations? Maybe you could, share some insights and recommendations.
Yeah, so just coming back to the previous discussion on the regulations, I think that one of the key issues to involve really the stakeholders right from the beginning, although usually the companies are not that much willing to be involved at the beginning. I mean, even a lot of discussions and preliminary talks about some pieces of regulations are taking place even now in EU, but usually it's hard to attract the attention of the companies at the beginning. It's how it is organized. I'm not sure what should be the effective formula to do it in the most effective way, but it's always happened like this. I mean, although there is certain efforts to involve the businesses from the beginning, the businesses are looking at the regulations like something which is going to happen far in the future, although it is coming in the next 1 or 2 years, and then there is the element of surprise when the regulation is actually is enforced, just because of lack of proper feedback, which is engaging really all the main stakeholders from the business side. What should be the incentives? I think for the construction, it should be some incentive to use recycled materials. Also, some incentive of even before it's the method of building of construction. So you should plan the recycling even before you're building a certain project. So we already have the technologies to do this. So we should work also in this direction to plan the life cycle of the building of the project, and how afterwards it's going to be recycled in order to take maximum of the raw materials, and even not only the recycling, it's also the secondary use of some materials. They could be used exactly the way how they are. It's a very good example in this direction are the bricks. The bricks, they're usually used for all kind of building constructions. You can make some tests after of course you should do the demolition works should be done in a certain manner in order to preserve them, but usually if the bricks could have longer life than the life of the building, so basically they can be used also in the same form again. So it's the secondary use of the material. This is something also that could be explored.
Okay, thank you very much for your insights. Ms. Rabis.
I would say that in my opinion, R&D is especially important here. And I think it already was mentioned earlier in the morning, but I think tax incentives for including more R&D workers, for conducting more R&D in private businesses is definitely something that could foster this. And I also see a lot of benefit in EU and nationally funded projects that focus on R&D. I think one of those is the reason that we're here today, so we can definitely say that it's something that's really propelled us as a company to offer that type of solutions that we're looking for.
Most definitely, R&D is the answer, I believe. Mr. Lee.
Well, I would like to add one thing, and that is one word that can help us, and that is circularity. We need to design all products to be part of a circular life, how do you say it, lifespan, or, and we have to reduce reduce the use of new materials, virgin materials. This planet cannot afford to anything else. That's the only thing that can help us, circularity.
Definitely. Thank you very much for a clear statement. And I would like to give the floor to the audience and to give it ability to ask a question from the panelists. So if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. Also introduce yourself and move forward. Doesn't anyone have any questions? It's already the afternoon, so everyone's looking forward to the networking part and snacks. Here.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jose Camacho. I am in IDEA Consult, which is one of the partners together with Glaburgastroy in the new project Movicon. I think that the three interventions are fascinating because they have a common pattern of developing from different angles what could be a technological breakthrough for the future if the certification of the recycled products or the carbon nanotubes or the cement concrete-free pass this test of competition with the actual products. I think I understood the connection that Thematic makes in between mining industry and construction industry. It was less clear to me for the Estonian presentation where were the industrial sectors to be connected in this electrolysis process. So you could elaborate a bit from the economic point of view, which two economic sectors you are connecting through your new technology. It would be interesting for me as well.
Thank you very much. So, as the question was addressed to you, please,
Yeah,
you
so
may begin.
I hope I understood correctly, but basically if we're comparing the industry standard of producing the carbon nanotubes currently to our company's technology, then basically what we see is a huge reduction in the energy costs that it takes to run this process. The CVD method is run at 3,000 degrees, so there's a massive amount of energy that needs to be used to heat things up to this temperature. So already we have some wins from there, but this is not the only area where we are ahead. It's also the fact that you're using the CVD process, the carbon nanotubes are actually made from petrochemical resources, so from natural gas, for example. So in that sense, basically the raw material that is being used is also very CO2 intensive, whereas we are actually binding CO2 in our process. So this is where most of our wins in terms of the greenness of our product come from.
Mr. Lee, would you like to add something?
No, I don't have anything to add. Sorry. I think the gentleman, he put it correctly.
Okay, that's great. And about the technological breakthrough, Mr. Marinov, would you like to make a response?
Yeah, it's about the technological breakthrough. It's always if you can achieve such a breakthrough, it's bringing a lot of benefits for the companies. In our case, with our project, we are even trying to create, on a national level, trying to create a new niche for businesses, which is the demolition part, because currently more or less the demolition is done by the construction companies. Not very, they are not very specialized in the demolition, like separate demolition of the products, which is the first and very important step to have effective recycling phase afterwards.
Thank you. We still have time for one last question, if it may be short. So this is your last chance to participate in the panel. I don't see any hands up here.
You shouldn't have mentioned the drinks.
That's a completely understandable decision. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I would like everyone to give a very warm round of applause to our panelists for their presentations, for their insights, and their overall job on the projects that they're implementing. So please, a warm welcome. I believe some of the key takeaways that could be granted from this whole panel session is that even though in times of international crises and the EU's as a continent's breakthroughs to ensure its independence and the local production of the materials and technologies needed for the clean development, it's time to put our policies on few main pillars. R&D projects and specific R&D investment, involving the stakeholders into the regulation process, and also international collaboration, as we can very much see from the positive examples that were shared today. So on this note, I would like to thank everyone for staying here, to being active, listening, and I also believe that now it's time to move from talking to walking to the networking area and to really create connections that could lead to future partnerships and businesses. So thank you once again. Thank you. Thank you.